Now this one, I am incredibly excited for, because Soma is my favorite horror game ever, of all time. However, I don't know anything about the company's previous games. I'm pretty sure how it went was they made Penumbra first, I think that's how you pronounce this, and then they went to work on Amnesia: The Dark Descent, which is still a classic till this day. So I'm looking forward to diving into the gameplay as well as the lore of these series, and kind of seeing the evolution of the company as they get towards making Soma. As well as, I suppose, Amnesia: The Bunker was really good, but I don't think Mandalore has a video on that one. As per usual, before we get into the reaction, make sure to go support Mandalore. Link to that is at the very top of the description, as always. Oh god, back up. I don't know exactly how to describe the style of, like, just the initial gameplay there. I don't think calling it old style is quite accurate. Like, would you even call it retro? There's just something different about it as opposed to, like, modern horror games that gives it a slightly grungier feeling in a way. Maybe I'm crazy and maybe that's just me.
Amnesia: The Bunker came out a while back, and I've heard a lot of good things.
Hey.
It also made me realize that I haven't played an Amnesia game since A Machine for Pigs. I've gone back to Penumbra, The Dark Descent, Soma, but A Machine for Pigs left some kind of brain block in me. So I figured I'd go back and play through the frictional and adjacent games up to The Bunker. These won't be pure back-to-back videos, and Penumbra especially is something I've wanted to talk about a long time now. I can only guess things turned out this way because playing through such a one-sided nuclear explosion of a safari has made me yearn to be the hunted one again. So, let's take
You are a conservationist, yes? That game was kind of peak, but in a very different way.
a look at the entire Penumbra trilogy. You play as a man named Philip, and the story kicks off a few days after the funeral of his mother. His father abandoned the family before Philip was even born, and to complete his championship deadbeat dad streak, he's dead by the time he's written the letter as well.
Damn.
The letter from the mysterious Howard begs Philip's forgiveness and includes a key. The key leads to a bank safety deposit box filled with notes, an indecipherable book, and a location somewhere in northern Greenland.
An indecipherable book and locations to somewhere in Greenland. Do I really want to go there? I think my family heritage can, just stay in the past, let it be forgotten. This has Bad News Bears written all over it, but I suppose there are some people out there who need to know. Being a type person myself, from a culture that is incredibly superstitious, I can tell you that we don't fuck around and find out. I have no idea if any of that exists, but there ain't no good reason to go out there testing it.
Howard says he's sorry for what he did and that he can't explain more, but Philip must destroy it all. Well, 30 years of absence is a lot to let go, so after a year of preparation, Philip arranges a journey to the uninhabited spot in northern Greenland, off to find answers of what his father was doing and leaving a letter of his own. This all being in past tense doesn't bode well, and we have a Howard and Philip, just no Lovecraft. Yet. After a long boat ride and an argument with his old friend Jack, Philip makes it to Greenland. It
Lovely.
sucks. And there's mysterious howling in the wind. He does escape it by finding a mysterious metal hatch, sheltering him from the storm and kicking off 3 games of nightmares. Because when you find Arthas Menethil's trap house hobbit hole and it's full of empty boxes of ammo, that's not a good sign.
Yeah, for sure. Uh-oh. What is this whispering? So, you mean to tell me that this guy's been stuck down here in whatever facility this is for 3 whole games? This poor dude.
I think that covers enough for now. Let's look at the graphics. Penumbra Overture was made by a small team and used an in-house engine. If you compare it to other FPS games from the time, at least on a technical level, then yeah, it is on the lower end. But that wouldn't feel entirely fair because this is a first-person adventure game. There is combat, but it's not the focus, and almost all of it can be avoided if you're careful. You move through a mysterious underground facility, dealing with strange creatures and occasionally solving puzzles. It is very Half-Life inspired, and the game is upfront about that too.
Gotcha.
But besides having pure platforming or other kinds of
That reminds me. I think I do have a video on the list about Half-Life lore. Considering how influential that game is, I definitely should get around to it at some point.
Valve puzzles, it has more of the traditional collect items in your inventory, combine objects here and there, and fighting is something you do when you have to rather than the focus. And even then, smart use of your inventory and setting up an area means there are better ways of fighting. because combat is intentionally clunky, so it gives you cool and engaging options to work with or around those limits. Instead,
that reminds me of how they crafted Thief, and the difference between Thief and Dishonored. With Dishonored being you have to sneak around in order to avoid killing the guards because you don't want to, and Thief having clunky combat because obviously you're a thief, you're not some sort of warrior, so you're not going to be dueling like 3 or 4 guys who find you, therefore giving you a really good reason to engage with the main gameplay loop.
of really locking you in with some rough combat sections. So anyhow, the game has a stark, dreary look to everything.
I wonder what that game was.
Even in rooms dominated by machinery or shelves of ice. It all feels so empty and isolating, and it's a good reminder of how remote you actually are. What makes it interesting is that the deeper you go, the more dense areas can start becoming. Going farther into Bedrock Hell reveals more answers, but it also comes across as more lived in and less surreal than previous areas. You're being breadcrumbed by little pockets of civilization and humanity on the way down, but ultimately, you are going deeper. The drab color scheme and the lacking but effective use of lighting give the game a lonely feel that I haven't felt in many others. I've played games like Infer that perfectly capture that in parts, but not as relentlessly all the way through like Penumbra.
Don't know
Dreary
anything about
Isolation
Infra.
is the name of the game, which I'm sure some people are actively seeking out after Thanksgiving. The sound design complements this perfectly and is definitely punching above the visuals. There's a constant background drone, strange rumblings in the tunnels, maddened whispering. It does a ton of work
Lovely.
pulling you in.
Hello? Definitely don't do what I just did. That's how you get yourself killed.
The effects themselves usually aren't even that complicated or unusual, but they can come through with such a clarity that you don't expect from a game that looks like this. Then the sounds of some enemies will be uncertain and muffled enough that you're not sure where they are, which is such a great touch. The game has lots of appropriate string-focused building tension music, which is often front and center in the foreground and works great there.
Oh god, even like the creaking of the floorboards as you walk around, it just builds so much tension because you know that there's something there. Obviously, there's like a bloodstain and there's a dragging lines away from it. So you're sort of internally cursing at yourself for making so much noise, but like there's no other way to move about. Man. And that's an interesting thing to note with the sound design, where it makes it so that you're not entirely sure where the enemy is coming from. As opposed to what people would normally consider to be good sound design, as in, like, you could hear exactly within a 3D space where something is and moving, which was sort of the case with the Thief games, but that's because they're good for different reasons. And I guess as a broad stroke, it's like whatever is fitting for the gameplay. In Thief, you need to know exactly where the guards are in order to avoid them. But here, it's more so to heighten the tension and make you believe that there's danger everywhere, because truthfully, that is the case.
Like, it is fairly common creep in and fallback horror game music, but there are some tracks tied to events in the story that really are haunting and beautiful.
Why do horror games have, like, some of the most beautiful soundtracks
Honestly, I
out
think
there?
the soundtrack is incredibly underrated. Right from the title screen, there's so much emotion to it. Though, to be fair, the best stuff is drowned out by how often you hear the Dogs on the Prowl theme and tracks like that, but man, the highs are so high. Also, the game only has 2 voice actors. One is Philip in the opening narration, who's fine, but his role is also uncredited. It's actually the game's writer. They were just running short of time and money and couldn't hire a proper Philip in time for launch. The other is a crazed rat man who only contacts you over the radio and is your only real friend.
Those holes in my mind are increasingly gaping. You cannot breach the inner sanctum of the place of storing. The entryway is blocked. So what if the squashy material between my ears is squashier than most?
He absolutely sells a character that has lost his mind, but knows things. Where you might not feel too invested in Howard, good old Red here gives you a lot more to chew on. He just gives a really solid performance. When it comes to the game itself, Penumbra was intended to be a trilogy from the very beginning. Like the original Half-Life 2 plan, they would be short episodic games, so it would come out not too
Half-Life 3 when? Valve? When? Imagine if they release it as like an exclusive for the Steam Deck 2. That would be the ultimate gamer move.
Far away from each other. This plan was kept slightly better than Half-Life's. Keeping that in mind, Overture is a short game, only a few hours long. And narrative-wise, it does make it tricky to try and view it standalone. There are lots of musings on Howard and the family situation, plenty of clues that are brought up but not resolved or elaborated too much on. Overture actually is just surface level. Philip is breaking through the upper levels of the strange bunker, and won't be in the heart of it until the next game. There are still some good side stories to follow, like the tale of a trapped scientist. It's possible he's still alive somewhere, he's just been living off of spiders. He thought they were safe to eat for a long time until they started getting bigger, and then he got a strange tongue infection, which you can find the results of. He kept it with the nice vintages too, so I don't know what that's about. Anyways, controlling Penumbra is very interactive. If they don't go in your inventory, picking up and using objects can mean actually picking them up with your mouse and moving them around. There's no open door button, you have to physically push and pull them. The same goes for looting. Do you want to open a cabinet
just like
or a
in
desk?
Amnesia,
Well, you'll be opening every individual drawer. Sure, it's not offering you a trip to Six Flags, but you may have been somewhere similar before. Having this kind of physicality puts you more in the game world. Interacting with objects actually gives you a sense of their density and weight. This feeds you a lot of information that you might not consciously notice. Whether you're trying to build a makeshift bridge or break a machine, having the objects in the environment interact realistically does ground the game in logic.
Cool.
A lot can be moved or knocked down, and you can alter their properties to make it possible. So it may be an adventure game with puzzles and obstacles, but it's telling you to approach them like a human being, and not some kind of baboon who's strung out on bath salts.
That is definitely a strength for this game. When the puzzles are based around real-world physics, then there isn't any confusion with what you're supposed to do. Although, I'm sure that there's probably some convoluted puzzles. Like, in every game that has puzzles, there's gotta be some that people just don't understand. I just think it's a lot easier to make sure that you understand, as opposed to some of the moon logic that we see from the older click-and-point adventure games. I don't even want to know what this is.
Penumbra says thinking this through like you're in the situation is the way to go. Even on the rare occasion where something seems off, like an important item being especially high up and hard to see on a shelf, but you then find a note that reveals some workers were tormenting their hobbit co-worker by putting the items up there in the first place.
Bro.
That's about as far as Overture will stretch its problem-solving logic. There are still a few tedious ones, but nothing that makes you feel too crazy. Going back to that item interactivity, it's also helpful for dealing with the locals.
There's gotta be a few.
Knowing which heavy objects can properly block off a door, or serve as an improvised weapon, or be loud enough to be thrown as a distraction. Philip is not a fighter, and especially on higher difficulties, his enemies will get stronger and faster. Like I said before, a straight-up fight won't be ideal. Stealth is one of the strongest approaches Philip has, and it's tied to his one superpower. See, normally you have two light sources. A glow stick, which will last forever but casts very little light, and then a proper heavy-duty flashlight. Though in all his wisdom and preparation, Philip apparently bought a flashlight that was used for clearing out Viet Cong tunnels. It drains multiple batteries per hour, and finding more automatically fills it a measly 10%. If Alan Wake had this flashlight, he'd be dead before sundown. That's how shit it is. But you won't catch me using it too often because by just holding still, Philip will gain night vision. So by being quiet and careful, you can save your flashlight for when it really matters. So the main loop is gathering items and completing puzzles while keeping your face. And it's having those two aspects intertwined that makes the game work so well. Like on its own, having the click-drag interactivity is neat, I guess. It's fun to use more arm movement than usual to actually smash something, and then you feel kind of annoyed because turning a valve feels incorrect, like you need a bigger mouse pad or something. It puts you more hands-on in the world, noticing things you might not have otherwise, but it's also clunky and intentionally so. To get into that more, one of the enemy types you face down are dogs. Aggressive, fast, likely undead dogs. The dogs you see on a walk that you're confident the owner will have no control over when they go apeshit. Like, surely a wooden door...
Who was that? What? It is really funny, though, when you see these tiny people out there with these massive dogs who would probably just drag them along the ground if they ever decided to bolt. But yeah, when it comes to physically moving objects with your mouse around in the world, there's always going to be pros and cons to every sort of mechanic. It's just supposed to feel clunky, and ultimately it's just not going to be for everybody. Nowadays, thankfully, I do have a proper desk, so I do have more space for my mouse to be. But before, in the condo that I used to live, I was basically just having my entire setup on a built-in, dresser, and the space there, plus the monitor and my computer, was just incredibly tiny. I had barely any room to move my mouse, so I can understand the frustration if you're in that sort of setup and trying to play one of these games. It ain't gonna be an easy time.
2 barrels will at least slow Cujo down.
Oh my goodness!
You could sneak past them, but if you're staying in an area, that means you'll have to keep sneaking past them. Which is still doable, especially if you have super distracting items like flares. But you could find stuff that would really occupy their time, like beef jerky and other food. You could leave it alone from there, or compound that distraction with a chemical compound and send it straight to the dog afterlife. But that's assuming there's only a dog around, and a big explosion won't call in more. At the end of the day, you could go for the straight-up fight, but your swings will still be awkward and slow-going. A dog usually won't stick around to fight to the death either, and will run off, howling for other dogs, or finding a spot to recuperate. Even by using the environment to try and get an easy pick-off, there's still a lot of factors that you can't be sure about. And that is what puts so much great tension into the enemy encounters. Sometimes you launch an ambush and it goes perfectly to plan, sometimes you think you have a great setup and then it all falls apart. Then sometimes you're caught with your pants down, make a split-second decision, and it all works out. Overture gives you a lot of options for dealing with enemies, but never points to one as the correct or easy one. Though if you are a natural at it, or have replayed this game as much as I have, getting good at Pickaxe Foo is a very good solution. It does stay floaty enough to not feel reliable. You can see here the dog is like sinking to the floor. It's not perfect, but for its first iteration, there's a lot of interesting stuff here. All the options in deciding how to approach an enemy, maintaining composure using the game's control scheme, opening doors and doing things that would be one click in most other games. And besides, this doesn't include
Yeah. That's a good point. If you're trying to open a door while getting chased, you kind of have to do the correct mouse movement, but you can mess it up super easily. That's actually really cool. Somewhat similar to like the older Resident Evil games, where every single door was essentially like a cutscene and then you would load through it. But because of that, it created the anticipation of not knowing exactly what was behind the door. Until, of course, you saw it after the game had loaded it. Maybe it's kind of annoying nowadays with all our quality of life and how modern games work, but back then, I feel like it probably would have given you the same feeling of flipping through a page and then seeing the horrific illustration on the other side, in a similar fashion as to when you're reading a Junji Ito manga, which is why I think like Junji Ito adaptations into anime never really work out, because it lacks that flipping of the page motion and the anticipation of not knowing exactly what's on the other side.
with the enemies you won't be killing.
That's a big boy.
Due to the episodic setup, most of the story's meat will be in the next game, Black Plague. So if you want to avoid huge spoilers, you can hop off before then. Otherwise, I'm going to go through the hooks that Overture has. One of the weirdest aspects about this place is how disjointed it is. One area could be an old, haunted Scooby-Doo mineshaft, then the next room over could have modern machinery and working electricity. Exploring around, you find this place has had a lot of uses over the past century. In the early 1900s, it was being used as a lead mine, but one that was considered to be an especially dangerous lead mine, which is kind of like saying you found an especially dangerous nuke. To the point it was called a death mine. University researchers found abnormally higher rates of suicide and schizophrenia among the mine workers. Because again, all lead mines come with this, but the entire crew shouldn't be this insane or dead just yet. The researchers found that some rocks in the cave had hallucinogenic properties, and that was the cause of it. Some local Inuit workers claimed it was the work of the Turnget, which the university calls spirits in the mountains, but you can find an article written by a convert to Christianity who tries to define what these spirits and beliefs actually are under their new religion. He didn't try to pull off the Uno reverse card that practices like Hinduism do. Oh, you've got a new character? Welcome to the roster. So a Turngat is a disembodied spirit that causes misfortune, which on the low end means your tools break and on the high end means a possession. So the writer acknowledges that it's basically a demon. But not all Turngat stories depict them as evil. The writer thinks it's because the tribal shamans are in on it too and part of the problem. Okay, so current culprits are evil spirits or trippy rocks. Well, from there, part of the mine was converted into a British command bunker during World War II, and over the years, the soldiers there began to find strange artifacts. These are your save points, and they give you strange visions of Howard, yourself, strangers you don't recognize, and Philip thinks they're taking part of his soul. Strange events and deaths continued, other scientists came to study the strange mutations in the wildlife, and it wasn't until a massive unknown disaster happened that the place was finally shut down. But it wasn't long after until another group began to set up, including Howard. They called the facility the Shelter and began to set up purely to study all the strange things happening, and they operated here with only relatively minor incidents for a good 30 years. Researching the strange substances, the wildlife, the artifacts, everything. And their reports don't come across like a government agency.
Really? Chief Attending Xeno Officer, was that his title? Very intriguing title. The Shelter, huh? It almost feels like an SCP organization thing, but it doesn't feel as official as that. But dang, like, this place has a lot of history to it. So many different hands went through it, which definitely explains the different environments. If I'm gonna make a quick prediction here, I'm going to guess Eldritch Horror, right? That would sort of encompass all of the symptoms that we're currently seeing here, but who knows? Maybe a horror game based around hallucinogenic rocks could be kind of interesting. It's certainly unique. I don't think I've ever seen a horror game based off of that.
They refer to their ranks by castes and imply that their work there has some kind of higher purpose. The shelter is just one spot of interest, and they're powerful enough to operate all around the world. So does that make Red, the deranged voice, a secret society member? Nope. He's a simple miner who was caught in a cave-in. He spent 30 years reading, scavenging, and barely surviving in the dark. When you finally reach him, he's locked himself inside of an industrial furnace and is begging you to kill him. And he cannot be convinced otherwise.
Poor
guy.
You
wish to find what it is you seek, but that is a fiction. You cannot know what it is you sought through the vast leaden doorway, or else you would seek anything else in the world.
Red sounds equally happy and sad that you're there to kill him. He's solidly barricaded in with a key need to progress, so there's no going back. He says he's wanted to die for years, but it's against the rules, so he hasn't done so. The big cross he left at the front of the machine could be that he fears the sin of killing himself. Or there could be more to it that you can't comprehend just yet. No matter the...
I'm going to assume there's more to it. And maybe this guy isn't as crazy as he portrays himself to be. Either that or the Eldritch Horror, well, I still haven't been confirmed yet, but if he has experienced it, it would explain why his mind is frazzled.
Reason, it's a dark day for a barbecue.
Do we really have to describe it like that?
It is a horribly slow process.
Yeah.
You didn't get to know Red well, but they made it.
What the frick? That's messed up, Mandalore. This actually reminded me of a scene from Zero Escape. I won't elaborate on it, but yeah, that was pretty horrible there too.
His death so long and agonizing that it's an effective scene. After a rough journey and putting most of the Paw Patrol 6 feet under, you can finally enter the heart of the shelter.
Hi. Oh. Perfect. Just what I needed. Ow. Did we get captured?
And that wraps up Overture. Black Plague will come out a year later, but it picks up immediately after this concussion screen. So, let's get right into it. Philip is recast and Overture recapped in about a minute. It's more poetic than how straightforward the Overture setup was, but it feels like an appropriate shift for where the story is going.
I found a disused mining shaft and took shelter from the storm. You had to know how desperate I was. I was plagued by doubts, fears, and mysteries, and aided by a madman, Red. You had to know how lonely I was. I incinerated my best friend. Red told me he wanted to die. You had to know how guilty I felt. I ventured boldly onwards, and was struck down by my own heroics. You had to know how stupid I was.
Apparently there's a lot of things I have to know. This is a peak writing right here.
All of these things. So human, so perfect. And yet still I fail to do what I must now ask of you.
Philip awakens somewhere in the shelter, imprisoned, and already in a certified Half-Life crawl space adventure. Compared to Overture, this is a proper, modern research facility. It has employee amenities. Ketchup, the most lore-significant of condiments. And that thing.
What is that? What is that?
And sometimes the world will break apart into surreal nightmares.
Sorry,
it controls the same, but a lot has shifted in just that year. For one, the game looks a lot sharper. It might not come across in YouTube compression, especially because the game has a similar drab color scheme as the previous one, but when you compare an identical room like the boat cabin, you can see where improvements to the lighting change the mood of an area.
Yeah.
Some assets have been touched up here and there, but there's also a greater variety in locations. Hearing that Black Plague is in one research base makes it sound like it would be more static compared to Overture. But no, they let you explore a lot of the parts of the space, and then areas beyond that when things take a turn for the surreal. Aspects that were great before, like the sound, have better mixing and new enhancements. The soundtrack is a lot less repetitive, and uses its high points more effectively.
Hey, you'll have to see an improvement all around when it comes to sequels. It is an unfortunate reality, especially with movies, where the sequels just never really work out.
You can see the better production value all over the place, and this even extends into the puzzles. Overture was logical, but mainly physics problem solving, which Black Plague still has plenty of, but now more problems require grisly and unusual solutions. Like needing to extract blood for a door lock because a new policy banned the unpure, at least according to the daily special menu. You might need to grab a severed head, some other body parts like you're digging through a Goodwill. Shai Hulud has a crackhead cousin causing problems, and sometimes it means setting up a fucking computer.
Giant worm. Install Windows.
Life is so banal. Is it always as monotone as this? I can't stand it. Let me out.
Even when it gets more bizarre, it's still rooted in logic, and there will be hints around. The otherworldly sequences are an exception, but they're mainly just asking for some experimenting. You can get stuck in.
Okay, I mean, we're already getting, like, otherworldly experiences, suggesting a breaking of reality, which is probably once again leading to an eldritch horror at some point. The signs are kind of all there. I'd be surprised if I was wrong.
More puzzles compared to Overture, but overall it's a good evolution. At its core, you're still thinking like you're a human being in the situation, but now some problems are becoming more fantastical. You know, in real life you might have to push some furniture around every once in a while, but if you often find yourself trying to pull Tiberium out of a claw machine, you live a more charmed life than I. So this side of the game saw great improvements, but there's still more to cover. On the survival side, the first noticeable change is that batteries are an actual item now. They don't automatically recharge your flashlight, so you can now stock them up and use them as needed. And each one gives way more power, so you'll likely end the game with a lot of batteries on you. Plus, the dark is your friend more than ever. The Paw Patrol may have been 2 days out from retirement, but the shelter is full of mutated staff. They've been infected by some kind of virus that's changed their form, given them a self-feeding umbilical cord. They are monstrous, but they're not zombies.
How does that work? A self-feeding umbilical cord? Huh? Does it, like, recycle nutrients through your body? That sounds disgusting.
They'll call out to you and each other. They still use tools. There is intelligence in them, and they're a lot better at hunting you down than something like the dogs were. But what makes them especially dangerous is that this time around, you have no weapons to fight back with. Well, sort of. Overture's melee system is completely gone. The obvious effect is to make the infected more scary because they can't be killed. You can still distract them, or hide, or technically fight back by throwing an object to stun them for a moment. There is a way to kill them, but it's an incredibly janky one that the game clearly didn't intend.
I wonder if this is sort of what carried over into Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Because from what I recall of seeing clips here and there, was that you could throw things to stun them, but there wasn't really any combat system at all. Best you could probably do is just like hold something up and try to push them away with it, I guess? Or maybe somehow push them off of a ledge?
It's significant because this is the change that Frictional basically built their brand off of.
There you go. Just as I said it.
You can't really fight the monsters, only run and hide. Overture's combat was floaty and strange, but it was also something that could have been iterated on. Instead, they threw the whole thing out the window for the next game. So why? Well, for one, it's a short dev cycle, and compared to fighting critters, having a humanoid enemy makes things more complicated. How do they physically react to hits? Do they block? Are we making a whole combat system now? If we keep it for the old enemies, how do we explain it not working on the new ones? Or do we take the tools away periodically somehow? Here's the thing, if you think of these two games as one game, it's actually paced out really well. You can improvise and fight back before, and you had some power. Now you're in a new hostile area with enemies you can't kill, and you don't lose tension fighting them in a way that can look silly. I really liked where the combat was going, but looking at the big picture, for this time frame this was the right call. Besides, they do a great job at using the fact they've taken combat away, which is very
intriguing, very intriguing. You'll love to see it though, like these creative decisions being made due to limitations. But because of that, you got something wholly unique to this particular studio. I definitely prefer the horror games without any combat in them, because whenever I do have a gun in my hand, I feel way too safe. And more often than not, even if the monster is horrific, I feel like I can fight back, which is, you know, that's kind of the whole point of that. But I also came here to be scared, or else why would I be playing a horror game, right? And in a way, it's kind of a breath of fresh air that games like these don't have combat, because I think most of the games that we play nowadays do have some sort of combat within their gameplay loop, or at least the ones that I play.
Different than you never had combat at all. You know, a lot of those scariest levels in games lists don't come from pure horror games. Like, me and others have praised The Cradle and Thief Deadly Shadows to hell and back. Who knows if Penumbra or Amnesia would exist without this? Depending on what you do in Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty, there's this great sequence where you're chased around by this haunted mech. You could have been obliterating people all game long, and you do still have some tools for distracting or avoiding it, but you can't just get rid of it until you've gone through the gauntlet.
I never realized there was a section like this in Cyberpunk. It kind of makes me want to play the game now, but I've already got a ton on my list. Maybe someday, but we'll see.
A lot of great horror movies aren't people hiding the whole time. Even if they fail, they do try to be proactive. So then you go, oh no, she doesn't have a weapon anymore. Or, oh no,
what does
Brendan
she do?
has the ranch again. So when Black Plague sends you to the kennels, and you hear the telltale dog music.
Not good.
Oh shit, I don't have a weapon this time.
Yeah. Hide. Please don't hide me.
The games I enjoy most really know when to give and take. So when you're playing Black Plague, it teases you with challenges that Overture had, knowing you won't have the same solutions. It still has incredible, frantic, tense sequences that don't rely on combat at all. Only the threat of it coming, and you can't fight back anymore. Because you're on the verge of unpacking a secret society and discovering the horrible truths of the world, you might expect the tone to be even more oppressive and lonely than Overture. And yeah, it does get way darker at a few points. But there's also a good amount of dark humor compared to before. How about the Secret Society? It has about 30,000 members worldwide and is called the Archaic, but only by technicality because it has no real name. Because a name gives power in identifying something, so Archaic is just an internal term. Their work was based off Leonardo da Vinci and founded by his student, Francesco Melzi, and they fueled rumors of their gay love affair to cover up their real research on beings not from this world. This is canon. The modern version of the Archaic is similar to Black Mesa, complete with having slideshows telling you about the importance of your cyanide capsule.
Black Mesa. I'm pretty sure that's from Half-Life, right? I've heard the term before. Or the organization name, I should say.
Shelter Research Station is encountering technical difficulties. Please have your personal cyanide capsule at the ready.
It's made perfectly clear how little the elites care about the lower caste. So as you explore, you get bits of corporate dark humor, which is played up, but not too often to be annoying. Also, you'll be interacting with a few characters this time around. Like Dr. Swanson, a shelter scientist who may have a cure for the infection, and Clarence, who is the infection waking up inside of Philip's brain.
Hello? Can you hear me?
That's not good.
What am I doing here? Who am I? Why can't I hear their voices?
It's not clear when exactly Philip was infected, but Clarence appearing in the strange visions means he's well on his way to becoming a ghoul. Clarence has named himself after the...
To be honest though, like, we've spent so much time down here. Honestly, just being here is probably what's infecting us, or like being within the proximity of the Eldritch being.
Character in A Wonderful Life because he also thinks he's a guardian angel. It's also because he's pissed off since he could go through all of Philip's memories and he never finished the movie.
How does it end? Now I'll never know.
I think Clarence is the most interesting character in the series. And the guy's an emotional roulette wheel to deal with. Because Clarence is the virus, but he hasn't been integrated in like you've seen with the other staff. It's not that Philip has special blood and Howard was warning him away to prevent this. Clarence also has no idea why this is happening. But as he gets more comfortable in your body, he starts demonstrating how he can warp your senses. Starting with a simple color change, but then he takes away your vision entirely and then starts shifting doors and rooms around the map. He has a lot of sadistic glee in holding power over you, warping reality, encouraging creatures to come kill you, but then he'll wallow in fear and have an existential breakdown at what he is or what you are or how any of this works.
Why is he separate and yet we are bound together? Are we truly a we, or are we simply an I with two faces?
Yeah, Venom is the only true answer.
Monkey.
Sometimes he's annoying, sometimes he's funny, sometimes you hate him. I don't think I could do justice to his big fuck up, but it's enough that Philip wants him out entirely. Dr. Swanson does have the cure, and she helps you get rid of the infection. Though during this process, it somehow transfers Clarence into a new host, and he sets out to kill you himself. So what the hell is this virus? Well, the shelter calls it the Turngat. They're real, but not how anyone thought they were.
Ah, okay. The Turngate were the quote-unquote demons that people thought lived up in the mountains, right? In the previous game?
It is a virus that was released from a tomb centuries old, but also an intelligent life form. Whether or not they were a physical race at one point or always existed like this is unknown. Whatever it is, it's a hive mind. Howard was trying to translate ancient writings to find out more, and when the virus broke out, sent the letter to Philip. You do find him dead, and while he admits in writing that what he did to his family was horrible, he doesn't feel bad because the work was just too important. His final theory was that there could be a way to communicate with the Turngat hive mind. After all, the Inuit had some kind of relationship with it in their stories, and they weren't always bad. Dad's theory was correct, but judging by his demise, it's not hopeful. But when Clarence has you cornered, the rest of the infected move up to destroy him.
Oh, rip, dude. Get owned.
At the end, this one was more human than he would have believed. Mankind, for his actions, I am sorry. For this next misconduct, I am sorry. Do not hate me.
Like your father before you.
That's very different. Usually when it comes to hive minds, they want to incorporate mankind into their hive mind for so-and-so reason, because, you know, it's just better to be together. But this one is very apologetic? I wonder why that is.
You meet the Turngat hive mind. According to it, it has long lived in fear of humanity. With its control over the creatures and staff, it could easily wipe out the shelter, but it wouldn't win against all of mankind. It does believe that most individual humans are good, but as a group they're destructive. And so it wants to test you. It gives you multiple trials with different solutions. Acting selflessly and for a greater whole is something that pleases it. And if you fully prove yourself, it reveals its side of the story. It is an ancient alien, but with a shelter called infection, some cultures called symbiosis. The Turngat's shared knowledge and memory meant that a person in a tribe who had it would be a great source of information. It could teach others and generally be wise. This worked in isolated pockets, but as humanity spread and grew, the Turngat decided to withdraw. Since it only thinks in one direction, it sees mankind as a giant brain ripping itself apart. We have no unified goal, are full of conflict, but keep advancing forward. So when its tomb was broken into, it attacked in self-defense.
That is really cool. The horror that we've been facing off against is inherently benevolent, entirely acting in self-defense in the best way that it could. And I guess I was wrong, no eldritch being here, it was just an alien that lives off of a hive mind. And certainly I can understand from its point of view that looking at mankind, we are completely ununified. That there is chaos everywhere and people are hurting each other for no good reason, which is really funny because I guess we're the horrible creatures, the horrific monsters to this alien. I like this approach. I don't think I've seen anything quite like it before.
Experimenting with the virus and finding ways to cure it were ways of killing the Turngat. In ultimate irony, what it wants from Philip is the exact same thing it wanted from Howard. Destroy all information about the shelter, keep people away, and let me rest here in peace. The best thing Philip could have done was let sleeping dogs lie. This loops back to him writing the first letter as reality crumbles around him and he decides what to do. Weren't the infected trying to kill us all game? Sure, but until this point, it just saw Philip as another threat. Or it could have sensed the aberration that was Clarence and was more out to kill him. When he's out of view, the Turngat is fine. Was it really pure self-defense, or detecting humans again, did it just attack on sight? If you really dig into the clues, there's plenty of evidence that says the Turngat is genuine. And there's lots of evidence saying it could be manipulative. Unlike Frictional's later games, you don't make a choice here, Philip does it for you.
Damn.
And that's the end of Black Plague.
Wow.
It's a dark ending, but gives you a lot to chew on. Did the Turngat sever individual strands like Clarence because it's the opposite of humanity? Does it fear any individual not it and will do anything to survive? Don't get me wrong, it's a really fun game. The first time I played it, I was hot seating with some friends and we were tearing through a frozen pizza. It's a scary monster chases you game and really excels at that, but it takes an existential turn with a perfect cliffhanger that you don't really need to resolve. And that was the plan.
Interesting. Okay. A lot of evidence supporting, a lot of evidence contradicting. It's really up to you to decide in the end what to do. While the protagonist themselves knows exactly what he wants. He wants this place gone. I kind of love that. Whatever interpretation you want of this series, you can have it. But it looks like I guess we weren't going to get a third game. However, I did do a quick wiki search earlier before doing the reaction, and I believe that there is a third game. It doesn't look like it's a completely full game. Maybe it's sort of like a spin-off, but there is one.
The trilogy, let's just make it 2 games. Well, through publisher, here's Requiem. An expansion for Black
Publisher.
Plague. It's pure puzzles, no enemies, and implied to take place in Philip's brain during the end of Black Plague. So, here we go. You teleport between levels using a fucking Stargate and talk to many characters throughout the series, living or dead, or their tape recorders, and the energy has gone from Black Mesa to Aperture Science. The levels are all pure problem solving and not meant to be real places. You manipulate gravity emitters and timed gates and teleporters. There are no new monsters, in fact, there are no monsters at all. Some areas have nice atmosphere, but there's no tension, and there's no feeling of stakes or reason for doing any of this. Sometimes you heavily rely on exploding ketchup bottles, because like I said, these are lore significant condiments. It starts breaking the fourth wall and
okay. Was this the developers saying, like, F you to the publisher? Why did you make us do this? We completed the series. It definitely feels like a half-assed, just slapped together game. Maybe Mandalore will talk more about what happened behind the scenes after this.
Calling you the player, so I broke its fourth wall and started breaking all the fucking physics.
Oh!
No more platforming for me.
That's fun.
You can choose between 2 different endings, and one is burning yourself in the furnace with red, or you can just leave and get back in the boat, and it's all symbolism, and I don't care. This doesn't matter. None of this matters. They used to sell this one standalone, but not anymore. It's only 2 hours or so, but a terrible follow-up to Black Plague. What do you call an expansion that takes away so much? Is this an implosion? I don't have much to say, it just feels messy. I would say stop at Black Plague, but there is one more caveat, and that would be Penumbra Necrologue. This is a mod for Amnesia the Dark Descent that's as long as the entire Penumbra trilogy combined. It does some things similar to Requiem, like bringing characters back, but Clarence was warping her perception, so that's all fine. The writing and voice acting are good for a mod, but they are the biggest giveaways that it's not an official game. It even reuses some ideas and areas from Requiem, but makes them way more interesting. There are lots of new areas, new challenges, enemies restored and polished up from the tech demo, entirely optional areas and encounters, some puzzles have multiple solutions, multiple endings, and an original soundtrack.
You'll love to see it. Modders coming in to save the day for a series that they love.
If you felt burned by Requiem and can tolerate some budget moments, this is a great send-off. Story-wise, I think Overture and Black Plague work best together. But if you want an entertaining what-if or just want to play more Penumbra and a shiny new engine, Necrologue is the place to go. It even has its own expansion built in to tie up loose ends in its own story and give a bit of detail of what happened before the outbreak. This one does go farther off the range with the story and some enemy designs and other stuff for my liking. But it is cool there is this line of active fan games. In fact, a new one just came out using the Soma engine. If you liked Penumbra, they're definitely worth checking out. Despite its shortcomings and lack of polish in areas, I love Penumbra. Or at least I love 2/3 of Penumbra and some stuff some fans made. It's especially neat now where you can see them experimenting before the Amnesia conga line. I did invoke the Goglins on this one. The pinned link will have all the Penumbra games for about $1. They also wanted to mix and match with Soma and some other stuff, so we'll see how that goes. The cold is finally setting in here, so more spooky games to come soon. In some order.
Cool. That was awesome. Such a unique story to it, too.
How did I predict what the Space Marine 2 sequel would be? Well, at the time, all of that seemed dead in the water, but it was what made sense. You need a horde enemy that's fun to cut apart, you don't want to do orcs again, so Tyranids make the most sense for that, and you don't want to do a pure industrial desert city again, so you do a lush jungle. It's what you would do to keep the same core gameplay without rehashing too much.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. I'm pretty sure there were a few people in the Discord as well who talked about how the sequel would be in this direction. And it came out and it was an absolute banger. I think they're still adding more co-op missions. Some of them I still haven't even gone back to play yet, which I should probably do a stream of them at some point in the future. It's really refreshing too, because Space Marine 2 is kind of one of those games where you have fun with it, and then you can just put it down whenever you want to. Don't gotta constantly do all these daily missions or have some sort of energy bar that refills per day. It's just a really fundamentally fun game.
Interest in covering Bolt Gun. I still haven't finished it. There will be some more Warhammer videos in the upcoming year, but there have been some videos like this that I just put off too long. Thoughts on the new Factorio expansion. Having the Space Guy working on it is terrifying. Everything I've seen looks great, except for item quality levels, which I'm not 100% sold on. I get how you can effectively get a reliable flow of them with production like you could with uranium in the game already, but imagining having to have a kind of item refinery set up for every single item in the game seems like it would drive me nuts. You don't have to, but I don't know. We'll see.
Holy hell! I mean, good. Yeah, more monkeys for the incinerator.
Was that Clarence? That's hilarious, man. But yeah, that was really neat. I don't think I've seen a story quite like this, with an ending like that. Of course, we don't talk about the third game. I'm pretty sure there was a lot going on behind the scenes with that one. But it's awesome to see how these systems sort of grew into what they are today and how the company has utilized them to their fullest extent. Next time, we'll check out Amnesia: The Dark Descent. But for today, that's gonna be it from me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one.